We have another exciting day in the markets coming up, and I want to talk about it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education, and if Han Solo had a clone, would he be Han's duo? We have a lot of stuff to cover in this video. We're going to talk about the indices, give an update on those, some big tech plays as well. I'm going to talk about some updates on some other stocks that I've been talking about, TMF update as well. So stay tuned for this. Lots of big information, including an update on Bitcoin. So if you want to see how I'm playing this market, I'll tell you later about the Patreon, about my options course, and about technical analysis for trading, the way that I do and the way that I navigate these markets. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Absolutely enormous. In the meantime, I want to get over into the charts themselves. So we're going to kick things off with SPY. Here we're looking at the chart for SPY tracking the S&P 500, and you can see here this white triangle that I have drawn in here. This sets up the range that we're looking at to see if we're going to rally higher from here or if it's going to be one that we're going to break down through. So 480 is at the top side of this thing. We want to be watching for that. And then down below that, we could possibly see all the way down to 467. Riding along what we have here today, the bottom of that's right at about 470. So from where we closed yesterday at 474-ish, just shy of that number. So we could possibly give up 1.5%, or we could put on 1.5%. The longer we go, the more we narrow on this thing, the more likely it is that we get a breakout in either direction, and the farther we could move. So we would be watching for that and see that narrowing continue for what we have on SPY. It's a very similar look when we go to the NASDAQ 100, which is the ETF that tracks it here is QQQ. And we would look at that one. This is the triangle that we're operating in right now, that we have room to the upside, which it is possible that should we break this top trend line, which right now is rocking at about 413. So yeah, we could make it up there from yesterday's close. So that'd be about a 2% gain, but then we'd still have room up on top of that, going up to about 420. So another 1.5% to 2% on top of what we've already seen. Should we break the top of this trend line, should we break down through it, we get a little bit more support than we did with what we had for SPY. We have room down to about 400, so we could give up a couple percent too when we look at this chart. So we want to keep that in mind, that we could still give up like 1% to 1.5% on QQQ, my goodness. But that is definitely something to be watching for in here to see which direction we break out of. So and for right now, the momentum on both charts, by the way, is looking bullish, whether it's on a daily basis or a weekly basis. We want to keep watching those. We do have an inflation report tomorrow. That's going to be a huge catalyst for the market. I do expect good things, and I am cautiously bullish on this market. So I think that we'll be testing these upside resistances sometime soon. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that and keep on playing for that. I'll post those buys and sells at the Discord. I'll also tell you about my results that I had in the market, not only with the options plays, but then also using the bread recipe through technical analysis, which follows exactly what's in the course that I talked about earlier. I'll show you the exact thing on it in a moment. So here for Apple, here's where we're operating for Apple right now. I said we could possibly bounce off the 200. That was usually an area of strong support for us, and so far we did. So we were down at about 180, and now we're up at about 185. As of the closing in the pre-market, we're rocking about 184. Apple has bearish momentum, but it is rising, so we want to keep on watching for that, and we need to watch out for this resistance line that we have coming down this way. This trend line is actually going to be something where we could see the price possibly stumble, and then we also had the 50 period EMA right here in red, it curving down this way, and then the 50 period SMA that is also here as well. They're going to act as resistance for us to the upside on this. So for Apple, we do have some room moving up, not a whole lot of room, maybe about 1% or so until we start running into some trouble. Should we blast through that, you can see we have significant upside that we could capitalize on, where it would take us back up to about 190 to 192 in the near term as we watch for Apple. For NVIDIA, is the top in on NVIDIA. We actually have, again, significant upside resistance. However, we have sold off from the peak where we maxed out on this thing. So I believe, let's go out to the daily chart on this. We can talk about the high price that we saw. And man, that looks crazy when you look at it on that view. So we actually went all the way up. The high price was 543, and then we retraced significantly to close yesterday at 535. And I said we could see 525 to 535 based off the cup and handle pattern. You can still see the remnants of those technicals that are right here. And that I said, as long as we didn't break down through the top part of this trend line, and we didn't. We bounced off of that and we just ripped from there, and the volumes are still pretty good on this. So there is still some upside that we could possibly see. But going back down to the hourly basis for NVIDIA, when we look at this chart, you can see that we're starting to narrow in on those prices. If we break to the upside of this, we have room to revisit 543, 545. If we break up above that, we have resistance again And that, once again, in the near term, this is the hourly chart that we're looking at. Still 545, I think, is going to be a maximum that we'll see. Should we break to the upside on this? Should we break down to the downside on this one? We actually have several different supports that's going to keep us from tumbling really rapidly, most likely, but then we do have this trend line right here at about 515 that we could fall back to, and then from there we also can come back all the way down to 503. I don't think that's going to happen in the near term. I think it's still going to move with the markets. I think we got our catalyst. I think it's boosting us up, but now it's kind of like, okay, the excitement happened. So unless more excitement happens, I don't see us pushing up a lot higher from where we're at right now. And when you look at the RSI, you can actually see the falling momentum that we have here while the prices are rising. That's bearish divergence. So more than likely, we're going to retrace on this. We could possibly see that 530 to 525 come out of this. But if we do happen to break to the upside, we have room up to about 545. So we have about 2% in either direction in the near term for NVIDIA. I said for a long time now, for months now, that this is a $500+ stock, and we're finally up over that number. So as long as the market doesn't sell off on us, NVIDIA should hang around there for a while. And if you guys want to see my stock price prediction, my earnings projection for NVIDIA, I'll be updating that for this most recent quarter that closes for them actually for January, so then into February, but I can still make my projections on them. I'll have that out this month. I already have my Tesla stock price prediction and earnings projection available, and I'll talk about Tesla next, by the way, but now's a good time to tell you about the Patreon because I do have both of those documents and accompanying videos that I put out over at the Patreon. You can sign up and you can check those out, look at the spreadsheet, see what you think about the stock price predictions, about the earnings projections that I have for both of those companies, and I do update those quarterly as they come out to be able to talk about those, to be able to plan around those, to be able to play the stocks accordingly. And then I also use options a ton, and I post my buys and sells. You can see those through the Discord that's there. My options course is also available, so if you learn about amplifying the power of your portfolio through the power of options, you can absolutely do that using that course that I'm building out. And if you want to learn how to do the technical analysis like I do, you can get the link down in the description for the Stockmo Academy technical analysis course that's over there, and that includes the bread recipe. And I'll tell you what, using the bread recipe the last 2 days with the options that I had, I'd call options out on TQQQ, following the bread recipe that's there, the technical analysis that's there, and that has netted me 28%, followed by 25%, and also through day trading. That one, just significant. Yesterday was a $1,000 day for me day trading, and it was nothing but bread recipe and technicals the entire time throughout the day. And it was just an incredible day, and I expect that's going to continue as it has worked for me in the past. It's going to continue working for me in the future, both on the way up, on the way down, you name it, it just keeps on working. So like I said, that link for the course is down in the description. There's even a private Discord that goes along with that, with the Discord community that's asking questions all the time, learning more all the time, learning how to benefit and learning how to amp up their portfolios through that technical analysis. So check that course out. All right, let's get back into the charts. Give a little bit more commentary on what's here. Let's get into Tesla. So moving on from there to Tesla, this is what we're looking at. I put on a purple line on here. This is what we currently have for support. In the pre-market hours, we're trading at 235.38, and so we're right around where we were at yesterday. We closed yesterday at 234.96, so right about 235. So we're just barely up from that, but we keep on narrowing on this thing. This is the daily chart that we're looking at, and this is a years-long formation that we have going back to 2021 for the resistance that we have, and the support has formed over the past calendar year when we look at this. And there's a breakout coming for Tesla. I think that earnings are going to be the catalyst, and I also think that the inflation report that we get on Thursday and Friday, CPI and PPI, are going to be strong positive catalysts for Tesla stock. So I think it's possible we take a bounce here and we head back up towards the top of this trend line, but I don't think we break the formation until earnings comes around at the end of January. And like I said, that stock price prediction and earnings projection is available right now over at the Patreon. Now, Moderna, give an update on this one because I talked about it yesterday. I said we need to break above this trend line. We need to make sure that we stay above the 200-day. It is possible that we do sell off a little bit. We are in the overbought territory, and we did sell. We sold just barely under the 200-day. We want to be watching for that in pre-market hours. We're still right around that 200-day simple moving average that I have on here. And this is when we could possibly see that golden cross moment, but we have to break over top this red trend line that you see here. And like I said, until that resistance is broken, we don't have that upside coming for us. Now, if I were to put one more line on here that I think is really worth watching, it would be this one right here. And this, as long as that acts as support. So today could be a day, if we break down below that, that's bearish, that's going to fall back down. At least in the short term, we have room all the way back down to the 50 on that one. So we'll be watching for that because that could take us down all the way over time back down to $90 per share. However, if we break above the resistance here and we ride this support that you have there, you can see we could have some serious upside potential moving into Moderna. So not a play I'm in yet, but it's a play that I'm watching. Illumina, I talked about this yesterday for my morning video, and not after I recorded it. During the pre-market hours, we had a pop on that. Nice volume coming out yesterday. This is one that I think should still show up for us today. There's not necessarily a play for us until after we break above this trend line, but when we do, we're still nearing possibly a golden cross scenario, and even if we get rejected at the 200-day, that's still up at $165, almost $166 per share, when yesterday we peaked out at about $146. So that's still over 10% upside before we would get rejected again should we break up above this trend line. So we're going to be watching for that. I think it's going to be huge. And then finally, TMF. Looking at TMF, you can see the area that I have in here circled in white. I think that bank earnings and inflation could be very strong positive catalysts for TMF. So this is one that I'm watching, especially because we're nearing that 200-day, possibly catching that golden cross moment. You can see in the past that we've gotten near it before, got rejected anyway, but I believe that we're under different circumstances, and this time we could possibly see that strength coming back to the bond market, and so we want to be watching for this. And one of the things that makes me believe that is I think the stress that we could see on the banks in the late part of the first quarter of this year can certainly be alleviated and somewhat avoided should the banks signal to us that it's time to buy into some of those bonds. And so I think the banks are going to report strong earnings, like I said before, but I think they're also going to cast doubt on the outlook looking forward, and I think it's going to move people somewhat to safety on that. Also, inflation reports I expect to be strongly positive for us, for the economy itself, and then also in terms of the stock market, I think it's going to be upward pressure on the markets, and I also think this is one of those moments that it's also going to be good for the bond market as well. They do not always move together. As a matter of fact, they often move inverse of one another, but in this circumstance, I think that they are going to move together. Just one last thing, and that's that Bitcoin update that I told you about yesterday. We got some fake news. We got a hacked X account, and of hey, we got the approval. And then it was like, a few minutes later, no, we didn't get the approval. But what it did tell us is that 48,000 is certainly within view. Let me zoom out so we are into the 1 minute chart so you can see what's happening. We actually came down, we came back and smooched the 44.3 mark on Bitcoin. Here you go. You can see the exact moment that it happened. And where did we peak out on this thing? We peaked at 47, as a matter of fact, I can tell you the exact price here. 47,897 was the high price that we had on BTC before we started selling back off. And that happened within just like 5 minutes worth of time from the announcement to the SEC coming out and being like, hey, that wasn't us. This isn't the announcement for the approval. But that at least is a fair amount of validity for us that we can at least, at a minimum, see the 48,000. I think 50,000 is in view. As a matter of fact, I think 53 to 54,000 is in view, just given what we've seen in the near term, should we get that approval. If not, I think that we could actually drop down to more like 35,000 in the short term per BTC. I think we blow right through 38,000, and I think that we would get a sharp decline should we get that rejection in the near term coming out. So overall, I think Bitcoin will have its bullish moment that we end up seeing new all-time highs. Maybe it's 2024, maybe it's 2025. We'll have to wait and see probably till after the halving to see what exactly is going on with the longer term price action for Bitcoin. But I will say that in the near term, it's all about the approval, and approval is going to send us skyrocketing for a little while before coming back down and settling a little bit. And then what we see to the downside of that, if the applications get rejected again, then that's going to be something that puts significant downward pressure on Bitcoin's price, and at least in the short term is going to be significantly depressed from where it's at right now. So that's my thoughts. That's my commentary. If you guys want to see the plays that I'm doing, you want to see what I'm buying and selling, that is over at the Patreon. That link is down in the description. If you want to see the technical analysis like I do, if you want to learn how to trade like I do, if you want to learn how to benefit from the markets like I do, that technical analysis course through Stockmo Academy, that link is down in the description. The coupon code is TRADE, and it is the biggest discount that I've seen for the course, and it's one that it lasts. Now we're under the 1 month window till expiration for that coupon code. Take advantage of it, and I'm telling you, people are absolutely crushing it and are loving it. And when you go into the Discord, you can just read back through and see the sort of environment that it is. That the people there, they're all super friendly. They're all working hard, and they're all trying to learn to improve themselves. They're posting their results. They're absolutely loving it, and I think that you guys will too. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning, and we'll see you in the next video.